On this special edition of Let's Explore This, we are going to be exploring not a town or even a site. No, we are going to be exploring a river. Well, we will be exploring part of it, as its course is much too long for me to cover in depth. You see, the Klamath River is a long river flowing for 260 or so miles from Oregon to the coast of California. That is just way too much for me to cover, therefore you will only be seeing small portions of it. As a member of the River Management Society, I took part in a symposium in April of 2025, and it was a symposium devoted not exclusively, but heavily to the Klamath River. You see, American Rivers, a conservation organization, listed the Klamath River in 2024 as its River of the Year. But just over 2 decades prior, American Rivers listed the river as one of their 10 most endangered rivers. Much more recently, in 2024 and 25, it is now seen as a great milestone in river restoration. Today's episode, therefore, is going to focus exclusively on the Klamath River and its dramatic restoration process. In doing so, it is going to be this article that will be put to video. Now, yes, I do recognize that this does tend to be a hotly debated issue. At the end, I will discuss that a little bit more in depth. For now, what do you say? Why don't we get out on the river? Okay, so a man named Bill Cross, he pulled his truck to the side of a dusty mountain road, and he jumped out to scan a stretch of rapids rippling through the hillsides below. As an expert and a guide, Cross had spent more than 40 years boating the Klamath River, etching its turns, drops, and eddies into his memory. But this run was brand new. On a warm mid-May day, he would be one of the very first to raft it with high spring flows. Last year, or the year before this article was printed, the final of 4 hydroelectric dams on the Klamath River were removed in the largest project of its kind in United States history, forged through the footprint of reservoirs that kept parts of the Klamath submerged for more than a century. The river that straddles the California and Oregon border, well, it has since been reborn. The dam removal marked the end of a decades-long campaign led by the Yurok, the Karuk, and the Klamath tribes, along with a wide range of environmental NGOs and fishing advocacy groups, to convince owner Pacificor to let go of the aging infrastructure. The immense undertaking also required buy-in from a number of other folk. Those folk included regulatory agencies, state and local governments, businesses, and the communities that used to live along the shores of the bygone lakes. As the flows were released, and the river found a way back to itself, a new chapter of recovery, complete with new challenges, did emerge. Among the questions still being answered are how best to facilitate recreation and public connection with the Klamath while its recovery still continues. There are hopes for hiking trails, for campgrounds, and for picnic spots. A wide range of stakeholders are still busy ironing out the specifics and how best to define the lines between private and public spaces. It is a delicate process. Not just the ecology is being restored. The indigenous people, whose ancestors relied on the river for both sustenance and ritual across thousands of years, are also renewing their relationship with the land. At this point, let me just mention this. In media circles, it is often talked about as this effort having been done simply due to fish recovery. Folks, that is only part of the equation. It is not the whole. You see, more than 2,800 acres, some of which emerged from under the drained reservoirs after the dams came down, will be returned to the Shasta Indian Nation, a tribe that was decimated when construction on the dams started in the early 1910s. Ready to be stewards, they are also now navigating their role as landowners in a recreation region. On May 15th of 2025, the first opening day for new access sites on the Klamath, visitors got the first real glimpse of the extensive restoration efforts since demolition began in 2023. It also served as an early trial for how the public and an eager commercial rafting community might engage with the river and the landscapes that surround it. As the sun broke through a week of cloudy weather that morning, rafters readied their gear near an access, now bearing the traditional name in the Shasta language, a word said to be pronounced as Kuchaschas. Now, folks, keep in mind that those areas of river I am showing you may not coincide with those being discussed. I did venture on a rafting trip on a small section, and I was at one dam site, but only one, and not all four. If we were here a little over a year ago, we would be standing on the edge of a reservoir, stated Thomas O'Keefe, the Director of Policy and Science for American Whitewater. As he helped Cross and Michael Parker, a conservation biologist, ready their boat for a stretch of river above where the Iron Gate Dam once stood. And the newspaper, The Guardian, that printed this article, joined them to try the section on opening day. O'Keefe has played a pivotal role in bringing recreation and restoration on the river. He hopes connecting people to the landscapes will help to encourage future care for them. The vast majority of people want to do the right thing, O'Keefe said, describing the extreme care taken towards ecologically and culturally sensitive areas. We want to make sure we can define where that can happen. There is still a lot of work left to do. Rustic roads that lead to the river's edge are minimally paved and laden with potholes. It's not immediately clear where visitors should park. Finishing touches are still being added on signs and infrastructure, from put-ins to picnic tables, with the completion of 5 new public recreation sites planned for the 1st of August. Then, for the rafters, of course, the river must be relearned. Roughly 45 continuous miles were unleashed between the Kino and the Iron Gate dams. Rapids, long dependent on artificial surges from the hydropower operations, are at last being fueled by natural conditions. Reportedly, the stretch I am here rafting on is part of those miles that were once deeply hidden beneath lakes. We are kind of writing the book on it, said Bart Baldwin, the owner of Noah's River Adventures, a commercial outfit out of Ashland, Oregon, who has taken guests downriver for decades. While he admits the releases from the dams made for world-class rapids, he says the loss has helped to create new opportunities. The scenery is stunning, and I think it's going to be special. The waters of the Klamath River have burst back to life in recent weeks prior to this article being printed, that is. These waters are the result of the melting off of strong winter storms. The Iron Gate Run bumps and sways through a mix of Class 2 and Class 3 rapids, enough for a fun ride that is manageable for most experience levels. Upriver, the exciting and challenging Kikaseki Canyon, likely a Native American term that I am certainly not sure I pronounced correctly, winds through more than 2.5 miles of Class 4 rapids, beckoning those with more expertise. Interestingly enough, I was originally scheduled to be running a Class 4 section. Instead, I ended up getting stuck with just a Class 3 section because, well, the river was running a tad bit too high. Anyhow, as he called out paddling orders to navigate his boat's small crew through splashy sections, Cross was relieved. In the years before the dams came out, he had worked to outline the new river and its whitewater potential, armed with historical topographic maps, old photos, and bathymetric data that showed depth and underwater terrain. Rooted in science, it requires a bit of guesswork. The volcanic geology here often does come with surprises. I spent the first 6 months sweating bullets, watching the water recede and the channel scour, and wondering if there was going to be a waterfall I didn't predict. He stated, even with strong flows, there was space to breathe between more challenging sections. There were spots to beach boats for a picnic lunch, places to quietly float through the vibrant scenery. Vestiges of the recent past are still visible. Gradients of green shroud a scar left by the high water mark of the reservoir. Columns of dried mud, remnants of the 15-meter cubic yards of sediment held behind the dams, are clumped along the river's edge. Now, yes, of course, some of this I did not come across along these stretches of river I was on or around. As usual, I will try to find what media I can gather to accommodate. Still, though, there are signs of nature's resilience. Swaying willows stand stalwart from the banks. Behind them, rolling hills splash with orange and yellow wildflowers. Ancient basalt pillars stretch to the horizon. Far from the hum of highway and roads, the silence here is broken only by the purr of the river as it rolls over rocks, accented with eagle calls or chattering sparrows who have already claimed nesting sites along the water. Years before the dams were demolished, as teams of scientists, tribal members, and landscape renovation experts tried to envision how recovery should unfold, there was not a guidebook to go by. There were no records for how the heavily degraded ecosystems should look or function. So, yes, folks, much of this did involve a little bit of guesswork. Creating the mosaic we are currently seeing out there has been a work of educated estimation, said David Kaufman, a director for Resource Environmental Solutions, the Ecological Recovery Company working on restoration of the Klamath River. There's nothing in that watershed that hasn't been touched by some sort of detrimental activity. In less than a year's time, a dramatic reversal has taken place. Some spots have bounced back beautifully. Others had to be carefully cultivated to mimic what could have been if the dams never disrupted them. Native seeds were cast across the slopes, some by hand and others from helicopters. Heavy equipment trucked away mounds of earth. Invasive plants were plucked from around the reservoir footprint before they could spread across the barren ground. We are giving nature the kickstart to heal itself, said Barry McCovey Jr., the Fisheries Department Director for the Yurok tribe. What he calls massive scars left by the dams aren't going to heal overnight, or in a year, or in 10 years, he added. Given the large-scale process, time will be important, but a little help can go a long way. In late November of 2024, threatened coho salmon were seen in the upper Klamath River basin for the first time in more than 60 years. And other animals are also benefiting too, including northwestern pond turtles, freshwater mussels, beavers, and river otters. It took mere months for algae, insects, and microscopic features of a flourishing food web to return and sprout. It's amazing to see river bugs in a river, he said. They are good indicators of water quality and ecosystem health. Oh yes, folks, river bugs. Aren't they so beautiful? Why did they avoid me? Not sure, but all of this, it might seem like a happy ending, but McCovey Jr. said, it's just the beginning. We are going to have ups and downs, and it will take a long time to get where we want to be, he said. Ongoing Yurok projects will focus on making more areas fish-friendly and closely monitoring aquatic invertebrates in coordination with the other tribes, researchers, and advocacy organizations, and the Klamath River Renewal Corporation that was created to oversee the project. Once again, yes, I was at a conference with the River Management Society on issues like this. Here are just a few slides from that 2025 event. There are also far-flung parts of the watershed they're still working to restore. Close to 47,000 acres of ancestral Yurok homelands in the lower Klamath Basin will be returned to the tribe this year, after being owned for more than a century by the industrial timber industry. Considered the largest land-back conservation deal in California history, the work there will complement and benefit from what's being done upriver. Even as recovery on the river remains perhaps at its most fragile, most who have been part of this enormous undertaking are looking forward to welcoming the public. I think one of the biggest fears of this project is that it wouldn't work, Kaufman said. I am excited for more folks to get out here and see what we are capable of. Yes, folks, the work does go beyond the water line. The lands that hug this river have had their own transformation, along with the people who once called them home. Overall, in relation to the Klamath River, there are 5 Native American tribes. They are the Yurok, the Karuk, the Hupa, the Shasta, and the Klamath tribes. People are really focused on dam removal and fish and recreation, and those are all great things, but it is a very personal story for us, said Sammy Joe DeFunturum, the Cultural Preservation Officer for the Shasta Indian Nation. As the tribe returns to their ancestral lands, they are envisioning ways to introduce themselves to a largely unfamiliar public. Their story is laced with tragedy, but also resilience. The Shasta Indian Nation is not federally recognized, largely because they were massacred in the mid-19th century when gold-seeking settlers poured into the region. Their villages and sacred lands were drowned in the damming of the river, but the people tied to these lands have largely remained close by. Many still do reside in the county. As the waters of the reservoirs receded, it revealed a place at the heart of their culture for thousands of years. The return of our land is the most important thing to happen for our people in my lifetime, for the generation before and the generation ahead, DeFunturum said, standing on a quiet overlook watching the river course through the sacred Kikaseki Canyon. The steep basalt chasm was left dewatered while the river was rerouted to the hydroelectric plant. There are so many things we are learning, like how to coexist as future landowners with the whitewater community, the local community, the fishermen, and then all the tribes, she added. It's a lot, but it's all good stuff. It's huge for our people. Looking ahead, plans are being made both for public use and for tribal reconnection. There will be access trails across their lands and efforts to plant traditional, medicinal, and ceremonial plants. Old buildings that once provided electricity from the plant will be converted to an interpretive center. Places have been picked for sweat lodges, an official tribal office, and the area where the first salmon ceremony will be held in more than a century. DeFunturum's grandsons, ages 9 and 6, will be dancing in that ceremony in the year of 2025. For the tribe, reconnecting to the river has provided an opportunity to reconnect to their culture and history. Part of reconnecting comes through reintroducing their language. James Sarmento, a linguist and tribal member, is helping Shasta people learn and use pronunciations for recovered places as they were once known, along with the stories of creation tied to them. The public will also learn them too. It's about making a relationship and having conversations with the land, Sarmento said. These are landscapes that we are not only working to protect, we are working to speak their names out loud. The darker moments in the tribe's history do live on. Remnants of the now inoperable hydroelectric plant still sit solemnly on the embankment. Coils of metal, enormous pipes, nests of wires that connect to nothing. A cave tucked into the steep slopes among ancient lava fields where 50 or so Shasta people sought refuge in the mid-1800s still bears the violent marks of a miners' raid that killed 5 people, including women and children. DeFunturum said, "It used to be hard for her to see it all. I don't feel that now," she said, "of all the places I have been in the world. This is where I feel the most me out here at the water. With that said, let's get back onto the river for a tad bit more whitewater action. What do you say? I know, it's Class 3, but it's all I got at this time. Cross, O'Keefe, and Parker pulled up their paddles to ease into the final float of the run, gliding them through the channel, a channel that once propped up the Iron Gate Dam. Overhead, an osprey settled into its nest with a large fish, as a throng of small birds scattered into the cloudless sky. Yeah, I know. I didn't see that. I wish I had, but I only had what nature threw at me while on the river. Each trip is bound to be different, you know how it is. Still, though, there are some challenges that lie ahead. The climate crisis has deepened droughts and fueled the rise in catastrophic fire as this region grows hotter. Habitat loss and water wars will continue as city sprawl, agriculture, and nature increasingly come into conflict. Still, for now, the river's recovery is a hopeful sign that a wide range of interests can align to make a positive change, even in a warming world. I never thought I would see the run under reservoirs be revealed, Cross said, smiling as he packed up his boat. As a new chapter begins, the Klamath has already become a story of what's possible, fulfilling the hopes that the project could inspire others. After decades of advocacy and years of work, we have salmon and beaver and poppies, he said. This river will go on forever. Oh, yes, it will. And my opinion on the matter is that the benefits of dam removal here largely outweigh the costs, with maybe the exception of the consequences to Copco Lake and a small network of other communities that had sprung up because of the reservoirs. The other concern is fire risk, as reservoirs can provide a water source to fight fires. However, that, to me, poses another issue. If we must depend on man-made structures to battle a natural disaster, then we better start looking at what we have been doing. Often, we want quick and easy fixes. The Native Americans, however, have spent years dealing with fire for many centuries. My advice to understanding that in greater detail is to watch the movie Bring Your Own Brigade. Furthermore, there is a fire management plan in place that involves portable tanks and the use of helicopter-related aerial river access points. So, despite it being a bit more challenging, it's not as if nothing is available. With that said, as the Klamath River continues to flow freely, as do I need to continue moving on.